All right, everybody. Hey, my name is Rafael Sangili. I'm the creative director here at Tri Digital, and this is Tripod, our podcast. We talk about all things marketing, all things that has to do with development, design. And today we're super lucky. We're joined by Bill Weddingfeld. He's actually our CTO, head of development. He's done a bunch of cool stuff to make all of our websites and designs come to life. So we're going to talk a little bit about how good dev impacts your marketing and impacts your revenues and impacts just your overall business as a whole. If you're a technology company, it's really important that you have a solid site that's effective, that's fast, and that works. So we're going to go through some of that stuff today, and we're going to talk about how to grade your site at the end to just understand how to make sure your site's even worthwhile and working well. So guys, follow along. It's going to be a great podcast. Thanks a lot. All right, everybody. We're joined by Bill Weddingfeld. He's actually one of our CTO here.
One of them.
One of them, and he's
the only one.
One and the only.
I defeated the others.
I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad it was Highlander, and the best survived.
I did get their powers.
That usually happens. Yeah. I'm glad we absorbed their powers here. And actually, so Bill's a genius, dude. Really, like legit. If you guys ever been around somebody who's incredibly smart and just intimidating smart. That's Bill. He's been helping us. He's been pivotal to Tri Digital and what we've been doing here and the growth and all the websites, the way that they look and how they're designed and kind of the animations that come to life. A lot of that has been because Bill has been teaching our dev team just kind of how to make cool websites work and websites that are effective. So today we're going to cover specifically how good dev impacts marketing, impacts a business's ability to grow and be effective as a whole. We're going to cover a whole bunch of stuff today. So, Bill, just give us a little background on yourself and kind of how you got involved with development as a whole. Is that something you've always done since
well, first you put me on a pedestal way up here, and people are going to very quickly realize that it's not.
It's a downward slope after
that. Yeah. So I've been doing development probably for about 5 to 6 years. All of it was self-taught. I got a master's degree in math, and I needed to figure out what to do with it, and one of my friends did development, and I was like, well, that seems pretty cool. So started doing that and convinced someone to hire me and tricked them, and then eventually just kept learning at the pace that I was okay with, and eventually got to the point where I knew how to do at least some things and kind of right, and now I'm here.
Nice, man. That's excellent, dude. Well, and then how did what was one of the first things you saw when you came in and saw so the way we were coding sites that you were like, this is a common mistake that a lot of people make, or maybe a big thing that you think you should take a look at when you're coding a site or thinking about bringing a site to life?
I think a lot of it, a lot of people focus on JavaScript whenever they're doing a lot of their implementations, but that can lead to a lot of problems that are associated with websites. So for instance, we'll just give a super quick example, PCH Technologies, right? So
sure.
They wanted this really cool design, wanted this really cool effect where it'd be matrix letters that occur, right? And it would just sort of come to life whenever you load the page. Well, super cool, right?
Right.
But what ends up happening whenever, if you can refresh that. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Super cool, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if for some reason JavaScript breaks, right? Well, now it says goobly goop on it.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. Now no one can read that line, right? So
absolutely.
Some people will just assume that their code is going to work in all situations. So it's super important not only for the user that no matter what, even if the JavaScript fails in certain areas, that you aren't reliant on it, and that you build a site that will be marketable in any instance, in any case, right? So what you can do is just have the header already in there, and then you can use your code to manipulate it to make it appear that way. That also helps with Google, because if, let's say it had the XCV blah, 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 blah,
yeah.
If Google tries to read that, it's going to be like, well, I don't know what the hell that is. Now you're lower on your rank. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So just actually having the HTML correct and then using JavaScript to then manipulate it afterwards is one way that you can just ensure that no matter what, from the perspective of Google reading your page and from the perspective of, oh, hey, I got this really cool effect, both of them work and both of them work towards your market.
Awesome. It's important that like the effect is still cool and effective and it drives that designer's effect, but it doesn't slow the page down, right?
It has to be effective.
Right.
If it's not effective, then it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
If it's all cool and at the end of the day, no one knows what the hell you're doing or what you're talking. Like we can have a freaking spaceship coming here blasting. And you're like, whoa, that's amazing. And then you close the tab because it's not relevant to you.
Right.
So it's always a balance between cool and effective.
Absolutely. So when you work with a designer and they give you like a design, right? And they say, hey, like I want to have this crazy spaceship that I want to put into this website, right?
Sure.
How do you as a developer work with that designer to still kind of get the essence of that effect that you want to see and bring that to life on somebody's website?
So a lot of it comes down to a compromise between design and dev, right? So design has this beautiful work of art that they need to be placed on a page, and that is functional from the perspective of the user. And dev's goal is to take that and bring it to life in a manner that the user can interact with well and isn't a hindrance. So from that perspective, all the different features that a designer ends up bringing in, now you have to put it in an effective manner. So maybe if they want, okay, well, I want this text to fly around and just do all this crazy stuff and then land right here, right? Well, maybe instead of doing that, which, that text, actually, you know what? I'll give you a perfect example. Can you go to trydigitalmarketing.com?
Try Digital Marketing. I've heard of those guys.
Yeah.
They sound so familiar.
Yeah, so we were actually in the process of creating Try Digital. Okay, so scroll down. So on the right-hand side here, you see how that picture is just sort of floating there, right? So one of the things that you have to be concerned about whenever you're trying to move from a design to the implementation is the design, no matter what you do, is always going to be static, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be exactly this big. Whatever size you make it inside of your PSD, or if you did it in Paint, congratulations. But inside your PSD, right? So there's not really an era of what happens whenever things get bigger and smaller. And so you end up having this floating image here. And so one of the problems we were having was that with this floating image, as the screen got smaller, then some of the images would end up overlapping with the text, right? And so the designer wanted a very specific way. And we were like, well, you can't really do that because you've made this design rule that this picture needed to be there. So from that perspective, you need to end up having a compromise. Do we just hide the picture? No, if you hide the picture, it just becomes a bland black and white. So instead, what we do is we can create this opacity on the picture. We still get the effect, but we also get the usability for the user. Otherwise, it just becomes a problem.
No, absolutely. And I like the one thing that I think you've done really well is designers come in and then we all we want to have this thing like this website, and especially creative directors, we get all these cockamamie ideas about hey, I want bells and whistles, stuff spinning, lasers flying across the screen or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you were the one who kind of grounds us and say look, we should really only choose one or two animations that work on this page because it gets too distracting, right? Like what's a good rule of thumb as you're designing a page or thinking about your website, or for the people at home that are still want to have some type of animation? How do I know what's the right amount of animation to put on a page to make it still effective?
Well, in terms, you gotta understand what effective means, right? So you end up having a web page, right? So what's the goal of your web page?
Right.
Is your goal to sell a cool product? Is your goal to sell, a service like an MSP? Is your goal to just show information? Well, first you got to figure out what your goal is. What are you trying to convey to the user? Why is the user there, and what are they there to do? After you've done that, so for instance, if your goal is, you know what? I'm a marketing company specifically for MSPs. And what I want to have happen is whenever someone comes to our homepage, I want them to understand that we are one of them. We have amazing culture. We know your industry.
Right.
And you can nerd out with us and have great results with your marketing. That's what the goal is, right? So with that perspective, you end up looking at the site and you can see, oh, wow, they do this custom artwork and it's like nerdy superhero stuff. And wow, look at that office. The office is super cool. Sorry, studio is super cool. And that's what the goal is. And you can see like this work of art coming to life, and this really shows what our culture is, as well as providing it's pretty much like a cinematic view of what an MSP is going to go through with the process, right? So you've merged what the goal of that web page is with the content that you have in place, and then bring about different levels of design as well as development in order to merge those two and create an actual effective web page. So at the end of the day, that's what it is. So just start with your content. What do you want to say?
Right.
Make sure that it's, to the audience that you want, and you're saying the things that you want. And then after you do that, okay, well, how can I bring design around it to make it special? And then how can I, based off of the copy and design, you should have a really good idea of so like if you're talking about spaceships,
right,
for instance, actually, GB Tech.
Oh, that's right.
GB Tech's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about spaceships and NASA, and these are the kinds of people, this is how we work. This is who we are, right?
Super technical dudes. Yeah.
Freaking A. Well, why don't we have spaceships and have sort of like launching and stuff like that? And so if
is it just gbtech.com, right?
I don't know.
Do you remember the URL? That's fine. We'll pull it up. I'm sure
it's
we'll
fine.
find it. Yeah.
So if you're going to have that, right, if that's like your theme, if that's what you're all about, is about being in like a command center, then why don't you have like an image sort of shooting up and maybe stars in the background that parallax, right? So you can have like stars in the background, and that can be static.
Right.
That's cool. But if, scroll, is it this page? I don't remember. There you go. Right. So if you end up scrolling down, then, a spaceship ends up shooting out, and you end up having this fixed stars in the background. And so it gives this really cool view that also inspires what the content is behind it. And so as a developer, you can give those tools to the designer and really work with them to help achieve sort of that vision.
So like if somebody's at home and they're watching this, they're thinking like, man, I got to design my website, right? And I'm not maybe a strong designer, but I hired this design guy.
Sure.
Is it good to always have the developer in that strategy meeting as well, that initial meeting, to kind of when talking through the ideas? Or is it better just to have the designer and the dev work on their own?
I think all of them should be a part of the collaboration, because the person that writes the content really knows what the message is, right?
Right.
The designer can give a really good idea for how to bring that copy colorful and like a strong design around it. And a developer listening to the copy and to the design can then go, oh, those are really cool ideas. We can end up bringing this particular animation that I know how to do or that I saw before, and we can just bring it in, and right, because the developer knows what's possible,
right? And
what's I have a thing that everything's possible as long as you give infinite time and infinite resources, right?
Sure.
So anything's possible, but the other people don't know that. But the developer does know what is possible within the time frame. And so having that collaboration between the three departments allows for a really strong product at the end of the day.
Interesting. So what are some we've seen a lot of websites that come to us before we start coding them and doing that. A lot of the MSPs and technology companies that are out there. What are some common things that just drive you nuts when you're on their site? Like, this is just
Sure. Okay. Well, there's a lot of them.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll go through a collection of things. Just imagine that you go into you want to do business with someone, and so then you go into their office,
Right.
and like the second you step foot, there's like a cockroach that runs across.
Yeah.
Right. And there's like broken tiles. And like the roof is just asbestos. And then you shake hands with a person and it's like a clammy handshake, sort of like that wet noodle handshake. And you just
super hipster.
like, and you just get this really just awful, dreadful feeling.
Sure. Just
Just sort of like, I wouldn't want to meet this person in an alley. Just terrible things could happen. Right. So like, imagine that, except a virtual space for that.
Yeah.
Right? Like them going into a terrible office is the same exact thing as them going into like your website. That's just trash.
Sure.
Right? Like you look at the website and you're like, is this just a dude in his basement?
Right.
Right? Like, is he going to actually do IT for me? Or is it really just he's going to convert all my computers to be Bitcoin mining machines, and then all my stuff is going to end up getting impounded by the government because he has illegal torrenting on it, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Right? Like, whenever you go to someone's website, that is a perception of you as a company. So if you're living in the 90s with your website, then from the perspective of the person that's coming onto the website, they're going to immediately have this feeling of, oh, their technology is in the 90s as well.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. We always talked about this before in the previous podcast, but it's important to bring up again, is that if you're a technology company and the people's first impression of you as a technologist or how to use technology strategically is going to be your website.
Yeah.
Before they even call you, before they step foot in your office, before they even know anything you do, they're going to judge you based on how you use technology, right? Well, the first impression you get is your website.
Yeah.
So if your website sucks, or it's all crappy or jumbled up and there's, it doesn't work right, there's broken links, all that stuff, that's a reflection of how you leverage technology yourself strategically. And we talk about this all the time. Like, look, guys, you don't have to get it through us. I mean, we hope you do. We're a small company. We can only bring on so many people. But if whatever the case, there's cheap ways to get websites nowadays. You don't have to.
You can just okay. All right. Okay, we're going to go through something. Okay, number one, there are many ways that you can create a website. Yeah. There are many things that are useful, and there are many things that are absolutely awful, right? So anyone can create a website. You know what you do? You take your PSD, you do a screenshot, you throw it up on your website, and the picture is your website. Congratulations, you have a website.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it usable?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
It's just an image.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Okay. Can Google index that? No, it's just a picture.
Yeah.
Right. So you can go from that perspective, and you can end up making one step further. Okay. How about you just get a Squarespace site?
Sure. Yeah.
Super simple. It costs $10 a month. Just freaking type some stuff into there. You can have your forms set up so where they immediately go to a Google Sheet, and then congratulations. Now it actually looks nice.
Sure.
It wasn't made by some a webmaster.
Yeah.
Good old 90s term. No, it was like, it's a nice site, and like it gives a good like balcony perspective of what the company is, right? And so then after you go from Squarespace, right, then you can start moving forward. Okay, well, now I want to do a little bit more custom stuff. I want to have because Squarespace isn't going to allow you to build something crazy, right? You only have so many templates.
That's $10 a month.
Yeah, it's what you want, you want, but it'll give you all the things that you need to start. And then sort of after you go from there, then you can go, okay, well, I want a little bit more customization. Well, then you can start getting into like WordPress, right?
Mhm.
In fact, we use WordPress because it's very simple for someone to just go in and change a thing, and that's something that we want for our clients, right? So regardless of anything, a client could just jump in and change something if they wanted to, right?
Right.
But it also has infinite flexibility in the things that you want to do. So if you wanted to, you could just freaking get a WordPress site, and then now you can do some crazier things,
Right.
you know? And then really, for the most part, for pretty much anyone, that's as far as you would ever need to go.
For sure.
And it's still cheap. You just need to know a little bit more.
I mean, WordPress is cool because like pretty much like, let's just say if you have one guy work with it, design it and develop it, let's just say, you know, God forbid those dudes, I don't know, I don't want to say something negative. Let's say they win the lotto, right? They're probably not going to come back and keep designing your site, right? So they're $150 million deep. They're off in some island somewhere partying, right?
Yeah.
But now, what do you do with your site, right? WordPress, anybody knows how to work with it for the most part, right? It's really simple to take it and do stuff.
It's really straightforward. You can end up changing anything.
Because we have some guys that I've seen bring sites over here that are like custom coded craziness.
Oh, yeah.
It's just.
And then unfortunately, so that has to do with like choosing your technology stack. And unfortunately, some people choose a technology stack that then requires you to have to hire someone that costs over $100,000 to manage it. Yeah. Just your marketing website, right?
Yeah,
it's not
crazy.
something special, you know? So don't choose this crazy backend just because you're into IT. Choose something that's good for your business.
Right.
Right. And so if all you're doing is maybe a blog and you have some additional pages about who you are, what you do, and what you're about, then just do something simple. It doesn't cost a lot of money.
Well, what would you point people to? Like, let's just say some guy's gonna, you know, just he's getting off that Squarespace site, right? Starting to do some real development, like starting to really take a look at, man, I really want to make some cool things.
So there's some tips I have. Okay, so first off, headers are super important, right? So on every single one of your pages, just have an H1. So whenever Google ends up looking at a site, you can put everything in paragraph tags if you want to, right? And then you can style it however you want. But whenever Google ends up reading that, they're going to want to see an H1. They're going to want to know, hey, what is this about? What is everything about? So always have an H1 in your on every single page. Have an H1. What are we doing? And then if you want, and this is even better, have a keyword in there.
Sure.
Right. What is the overall site about? Right.
Okay. Make it real simple. People navigate to it. I 2 seconds, I know what's going on.
Yeah. Don't do managed services.
Right.
This is a terrible keyword.
For sure.
Right. It's a real simple question. Whenever you're thinking about like keywords with SEO, just go, if my grandma or my mom or my dad were having problems with their IT, what would they search on Google? Would they search managed services?
Probably not. Yeah.
No. Yeah. They would search something else.
They would
like,
search my computer's broken or
my
something.
computer is broken, fix it. Or, they would search slow internet. They would search slow storage, running out, whatever. There's a whole bunch of things, right? Backup solutions, or I don't know, my server's on fire. Yeah, you got to put it in the perspective of like, what is the individual actually looking up on Google?
For sure.
And
you actually bring up a good point about security too. I mean, when people are designing their sites and have their sites out there, right now people are getting hacked. There's ransomware stuff happening all the time. What are some of the big things you've seen, just mistakes that people make when they're developing a site, publishing a site in terms of security? Are there like big holes that you've been catching lately that people are doing?
Well, when it comes to like marketing websites, it's not really a big deal. It's not like there's any private information that you're storing on your marketing site.
Sure.
Pretty much a lot of the sites that end up getting hacked, it's typically due to like phishing scams, whatnot. Just people will send an email going, "Hurry! I need the credentials to this site right now." They know just enough information about who you are and what you do, just enough that they can send an email, and the person that's that's managing whatever ends up seeing that like, and they click on the thing and they put in all of their information and lo and behold, oh no, 60 million accounts compromised. But I mean, with regards to that's the biggest thing, and that's the hardest thing to take into account. Just the vulnerability of a person who hasn't had their coffee yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm super vulnerable before my coffee.
Yeah. But going back to like creating your website, right? And just sort of things that you should really take into consideration. Another thing is images. So these are things that sort of turn like a developer that can get it done to a developer that's actually enhancing your marketing to the best it can be. So for instance, let's say that you put a picture on a site, right?
Sure.
Yeah, you could throw the image on there.
Yeah.
But there's something on there called an alt tag, right? And so what the alt tag is there for is it's there for a couple of purposes. The first one is what happens if like the actual image is broken, right? The link where the image resides is broken. Then what ends up happening is I'll say, it'll have a little broken link and it'll have the text in place of it, right? So that text should inform you of what the image is about and what it's there for. But it's super important for it to be related to what you're talking about.
Sure. Cat playing with yarn.
Yeah, whatever it is, right? And wrap it around what the content's about, And then the other part has to do with accessibility, right? So when it comes to blind people that use the internet, right? They're not going to be able to see your image. So what are you going to do? Well, if you want that person to engage with your marketing, you should probably tell them what the image is about. Otherwise, they're going to have a screen reader and it's just going to say, IT services provide a launchpad for your business. Image, and then continue, and then the person's like, "Okay,
yeah,
sure." Don't know what that was. Hope it wasn't important.
Sure, absolutely.
So that's really important. As well as that, just Google's going to look at a lot of things, and just like from a user perspective, people just naturally look at a lot of things without really realizing the things that like influence them. So for instance, page speed. Page speed's super important. And a user's perception of that page speed is also extremely important. I think on average, if a page takes longer than 2 seconds, they bounce.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really important to, like, if you click on a page and 1,000, 2,000, what's taking so long?
And it has to load all the animations. It's got to be ready to go, like 2 seconds. This can't be just stuff still, the little circle thing on your website still loading, right?
Well, that's where user perception comes in, right? So as long as the user, so if you click on something and nothing happens for 2 seconds, you're done. You're done. Give up. But if you click on something and then it immediately goes to a white page and then things start loading one after the other, that is infinitely better. Because what ends up happening is, would you rather have a loading bar that goes from 0, does nothing for 5 seconds, and then hits 100%? Right. Or would you rather have a loading bar that goes from 0 and then gradually goes to 100%? Which do you think would be better?
Yeah, you want the one that goes 0 to 100.
Yeah, you want to see the increments,
exactly.
Right? Otherwise, you're like,
what's going on?
Is it frozen? Did I go to the right URL?
Right.
I don't know. Right? So that user's perception, you've now made the website, even if the load time was the same, it doesn't matter because the perception of the user is completely different.
See, that's super important, man. And I think that if you guys are at home listening to this and you're going through your site, navigate every page, check every single one of your pages out. And again, if you have a website still front page 95, or you're rocking a MySpace page for your business, I think it's time. I think it's time to make a change.
There's actually a really good site that you can go to, and it will give you a lot of great insight. Okay. It's called website.grader.com.
Website.grader.com.
Website.grader.com, if we can get up there. And so all it is you put in a website, and it will tell you very specifically what's wrong.
Excellent.
And actually, we'll go through TriDigital's website and how it grades it. So this gorgeous website,
Beautiful.
right?
Yeah.
So if you type in tridigitalmarketing.com, and you can do this with your own website, right? And it will just lay out everything of, hey, this is how responsive your website is as it goes down to like phone size versus like just normal desktop size. It'll tell you how quickly the page loaded, right?
Okay.
And it'll give you don't need to put that in. That's not even important. And you need a G, TriDigital Marketing. That's important. Yeah, cool. Okay, so once this loads.
And this is
Cool.
The site is great. Wow.
Yeah, this site's great.
I like it.
Great. So if you look at this, we got 22 on performance, and then we hit everything else nail on the head. So we can actually go through this. So with regards to performance, there are some downsides related to WordPress, right? So with regards to WordPress, we end up using, WordPress by itself, it has a lot of HTML associated with it, especially if you end up using a lot of plugins, right? They're drag and drop, and you can just sort of boop and then put it in there, and it just magically works, right? Well, there's a reason why it magically works. It takes a lot of code to make sure it magically works. And unfortunately, whenever you have a large amount of code, a large amount of HTML, the performance is going to slowly go down, right? So we're at 22 out of 30 because there are so many plugins that are associated. But if you want, so it's kind of a trade-off that we end up having to make, right, for the business. How much time do you want to spend coding it yourself versus the business needs of how quickly you need to get it out into production?
Right. And a 22 out of 30 is still not bad. I mean,
no, it's not bad.
That's
we
not
have
bad.
a
Everything
92.
else. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's not bad at all.
You know, so if you scroll up to the top, we can actually go through it. So like right here, so page requests. So this is how many things are we actually downloading at any point in time on this page, right? So there's 112. Wow. And Chrome can only download 6 things at a time. So it's going to download those 6, and then as one gets done, they'll add another 5, then we'll add more, right? So that can be a source of page speed, right? So with that being said, those are like all of your images, right? Any kind of styling that you end up having or JavaScript, all those files. So what you want to do to end up increasing your page speed is all of your styling, you end up doing something called bundling and minification, right? So bundling is where you take all of those style pages and you make it all into one page, right? So now you only have one request. Then you go, okay, minification is, okay, well, now I have this one file. Well, let's go ahead and make that file as small as possible. So with your styling, all the spaces and beautiful way that you have it, that's not important to Chrome. Mm-hmm. All that's important is that it's syntactically correct. That's all that matters. So you end up just all the spaces go, and now it's this big. And it's only one file instead of however many, 50 files.
Sure.
Right? So that's called bundling and minification. And so that can greatly increase the speed of your site.
See, this is why it's so important, guys, to have a really strong developer working with you. And what that means, again, you have a slow site, people are going to have a hard time navigating it. They're going to bounce from the site. It's going to cost you business in the long run. Yeah. But Bill, man, unfortunately, we're out of time, man. This is hugely, I know it flew by.
Wait. So render blocking, make sure that all of your styling is at the top, all of your JavaScript is at the very bottom. Go ahead. Page redirects, that's super important. So you don't want pages constantly looping back on itself, and any additional pages that you may have and you're like, I don't need that page anymore. Make sure you redirect it to another page. You don't want 404s to happen on your site. Google thinks that that's garbage. You'll end up decreasing. Browser caching. So you want to make sure that the browser actually caches all of your stuff. Oh God, please press X. I don't have to show. Okay. Compression. So this is what I was talking about, compressing all of your stuff. Keep scrolling down. Google looks kindly on mobile and things being responsive.
And not a mobile site, mobile responsive site.
Yeah, don't just create a separate site that's garbage. Just be a better developer. Scroll down.
Sure.
Okay, SEO. So meta description. Meta description just says what the page is about. Page title we already talked about. H1s. Headings as well. Sitemap. The reason why you have a sitemap is the way that Google works is that it goes from one link, it downloads all the links from that page, and then goes to each one and creates an entire network. But if you have a page, let's say a landing page from your email campaign, Google has no idea how to get to that page. So end up creating a sitemap that has a link to every single one of your pages on your site. That way Google can end up crawling it. By the way, you can end up going to Google Webmaster Tools and give it your sitemap, and it will download it right then and there rather than having to wait for it to naturally go through those links. Scroll down.
And this is all free, right?
Yeah, this is all free. Security. Make sure you have an SSL certificate on your website. Google doesn't like it whenever you don't have encryption on your site. Even if it is just a marketing website
Sure.
and you don't actually have any information on it, still make sure that it's SSL. And that's it. Yeah, the page requests and the render blocking, that is specifically associated with WordPress. It's one of the downfalls of WordPress. It's very hard to control those things. So it kind of sucks in that regard, but the speed of development greatly outweighs those small things.
You want to get to market faster anyway. That's ultimately what this thing's about. So, dude, Bill, this is super informative. I told you guys. This is super informative. He's got a lot to say. He's very smart. So I want to have you back, and maybe we can dig a little deeper and break down some sites. And then if you guys are at home, if you guys want to have us just check out your site and give us some feedback, if you want to go ahead and just make sure you click subscribe on the bottom, and then just shoot us a comment on one of your pages. We'll randomly pull up one of your sites in the next podcast we have Bill on, and we'll break down your site and give you guys some feedback.
I could talk for hours about development.
I can tell. No, that's actually good. It's super informative. I don't know anything about development, so it's important that even somebody like me who, I can tell. You winged this. I can totally tell you winged it, dude. No, but I mean, just, that somebody who really understands this really well and can help somebody who's very layman's, like, the rest of the people watching this probably follow along and understand is hugely important, man. So, dude, Bill, thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, God.
Breaking stuff already.
Yeah, it's fine.
Never mind, guys. We'll have him back. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. And thanks to Scott and Nakobe for helping put this podcast together. And then Omar for the music. Thank you guys very much. And thank you guys at home for watching and listening. Don't forget, subscribe. Tell us if you like these things. We're making these videos for you. All right, so talk to you guys soon. Take care.